So here it is, guys, the new Xiaomi. Wow, it's not actually called a Xiaomi anymore, it's a Redmi. It's the Redmi Note 7, it's their new sub-brand of budget mobile phones. So they have Poco Phone, they've got Black Shark, and now Redmi. So 3 sub-brands for their mobile division, at least that they've got. So what's interesting about this phone? Well, we have a phone that has quite a good price point. 150 US, that is in China, however, that they're selling it for, with 3 gigabytes of RAM and 32. That's the start out model, the base model. So the one I've got here that I've picked up is a black version, and this one has 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. It's got the Snapdragon 660 as the CPU, and then the camera on the rear, 48 megapixels. The front facing selfie cam is 13. Your full specs are right up here if you are interested in that. It has a 4000 milliamp hour battery, so the battery life should be good, and it does look very promising for that price point, so let's check it out. So here's our box, Redmi Note 7, talking about now an extended warranty on this. So it used to be 12 months, it's now 18 months, but of course that's in China. And then you just get a little bit of a rundown right here of the specs on the back that we're already pretty much aware of. So it looks like we have a TPU case here. Now I got the black version. So right in here we have the SIM tray tool, that's to eject that out of course. A couple of instruction manual leaflet things, those look to be in Chinese, and they are. And here is that TPU case. I will show you this on the phone in only a minute. You can see it's one of those cheaper kind of cases, but it's great to have this at least in the box so we know straight away that we've got some protection for the phone, and it does of course cover the buttons on the side, which is great. So there is our phone, and no one's used this yet, which is great. I can see that because there's no air bubbles underneath that. And here we have our cable and the charger. So this is a standard charger, this one here. This is the 10 watt charger. Now there is an option in China to get the 18 watt charger, which is a lot faster, of course. So this one is with a maximum output of 5 volts, 2 amps. So it's not going to be super fast or anything like that, but it should do full charge the phone in about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And then here is our cable. So it's the typical Xiaomi one. So Type-C, finally they have used up their micro USB stock. Okay, so let's check the weight like I always do with my phone reviews. So 187 grams, that's not bad. And 8.2 millimeters thick. However, that's without that big camera bump, which is quite tall, you can see, because that then brings it up to 10 millimeters, or just under. So here we have down the bottom the Type-C port loudspeaker, and one of these ones will be the microphone. So not dual firing downwards speakers. I think the front-facing earpiece does double as a loudspeaker, but I'll confirm that in this video. So it's glass on the rear. It has a very nice smooth edges to it, and it looks to me like a painted alloy frame that goes around the outside. So far, I mean, the build quality to me looks really good. So the SIM tray will take either a micro SD card nano SIM or 2 nano SIMs. It has a rubber gasket around here, so it does not have an IP rating officially, but apparently there is some splash resistance with this phone. You can see there the gasket around it, and yes, it does have a metal frame too, so it's not susceptible to bending. Up the top we have a secondary mic used for noise cancellation and in video, a 3.5mm audio jack, and yes, it still retains the IR transmitter. So great to have 3.5mm headphone jack and still have the IR transmitter there as well. You can see the earpiece at the top, it looks a little bit wider than normal. Now we have this, what you could call like a water drop or a teardrop notch on here. Now this is a lot better than a big huge wide notch. This camera is 13 megapixels, so it is a bit of a downgrade compared to some of the other cameras that we've got on front-facing cameras, at least, that are 20 megapixels here, in terms of megapixels that is. We've got an ambient light sensor right here, and I can see just inside the earpiece up here, they've got other sensors, so that would probably be the proximity sensor that's in there as well. Then on the right side, we've got the volume and power buttons made out of metal. They've got a good feel to them. They are also painted as well. Now this lip at the top there, you can see that's plastic. So it's a plastic that meets and mates in with the rear housing that it has on here. So in the case, you can see now that it doesn't actually offer protection for the screen because the case itself does not raise up higher than the screen. So if you place it on a table, it is then going to get scratched. And the same goes for the camera, unfortunately. You can see the camera bump does not get any protection at all. So same story, place it down on a table and it could end up getting the lens scratched there. For a starter case that we get in the box, I think it's fine. It does at least protect the buttons, as I pointed out. And it's better than nothing and does give the phone a little bit of grip because right now here in winter, my hands are cold. This is a glass phone and it is super slippery. So out of the box, the phone does come with a rather large update that you need to install, 1.8 gigabytes, and that'll bring it up then to MIUI version 10.2.5. So my phone has 4 gigabytes of RAM. The other version, the cheapest one, has only 3. And out of the 64 gigabytes that I've got 49 free available to me. I'm of course installing apps and things at the moment. And it is running Android 9 security patch level from December. And for those of you out there that must know the sensor information, well, there you go. There's the two back sensors you can see using Samsung. The front camera is an OmniVision 13 megapixel one. And because this is not the global ROM version, this is the Chinese version, it's the only one that's out at the moment, you're going to get a lot of this bloatware, Chinese bloatware. Now, luckily, you can uninstall most of this rubbish. You just simply go through either here, the UI, or through the settings and go and just remove them one by one. So let's take a look now at the screen in a little bit of detail. I have noticed that just like the View 20 that I reviewed, that around where this water drop notch is, we're getting a little bit of uneven backlight distribution. So you see like a darkness coming in on the edges. It's noticeable on the sides as well. So the bezels, yeah, the top and bottom bezels, they're not the smallest, but I feel for the price that this phone is selling for, I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. It's fine. And the water drop or teardrop notch, whatever you want to call it, I think is a good substitute instead of having a big wide notch. Unlike all other Xiaomi phones since I think it was MIUI 7 or 8 or something, we've got this option here. So under the contrast and colors under display, you can adjust the white balance and you can just put it onto standard, which looks a little bit more correct. That's the best white balance there. So if you want the more correct white balance, that's the one to have it on. But of course, out of the box, it's on the automatic contrast. So our maximum brightness is good. It's 575 lux, which is very good, I feel, for the price. Now, when you have a look at the gamma, it is off. It's about 1.8, and it should be 2.2. Real-world images, they do come out good on the screen. And again, factoring in the price, I mean, the blacks on this IPS, they're not the deepest, but they are reasonably deep. So that is really the only complaint I have, is just that edge bleeding, or that darkness we're getting around the edges, around the teardrop notch. That is really it. Overall, I feel, again, factoring in that price, that this is not a bad IPS screen. It's even better than the one that I've seen in the Honor View 20. And if you're wondering, where is the status LED? Well, here it is, right down here in the chin, in a very unusual location. I've put it here. Obviously, they didn't have room to put it up the top. So I wanted to talk now about the general performance, show you a couple of benchmarks. So I have noticed that at times you will get just the minor, slightest, tiniest little bit of full screen gesture lag coming in. But overall, it seems to be pretty good when you go through multitasking. So I will bring up here the Antutu score. I know a lot of you like to see that. So here's the Antutu score, almost 140,000. Not a bad score for this chipset. So maximum turbo is 2.2 gigahertz, 8 cores. It is really quite good, paired up with the 4 gigabytes of RAM on my particular model here. Now, DRM info, whoops, I just accidentally closed that, but I'll just bring that up for you now. So DRM info, of course, it's Widevine level security 3 level. So that means no Netflix and Full HD. We need security level 1 for that. Chinese manufacturers then are not going through that process to get the cert for that. And it's happening on a lot of tablets and a lot of the tech that I review. It's only Huawei that seems to bother to get level 1. So bear that in mind. With a budget device, is it a deal breaker not having Netflix and Full HD? I don't know. I don't watch Netflix on my mobile phone normally. So the storage, internal storage, should just bring up a couple of benchmarks too of that. Here we go. So it does have eMMC 5.1 spec storage. Now I expected this. We're not going to get UFS 2.1, not at the price point of this. And those speeds are fine. It's not going to be bottlenecking the system here at all with that. And also to test out the wireless, so here you can see this is actually LTE speeds here in Spain. Not bad at all, 35 download. The signal strength perception all seems to be fine there. And here was my wireless speed test too. So that's perfect. No problems with that. GPS as well, it's working good. We get almost all of the satellites locked onto. First lock took about 30 seconds. And then moving around town and everything has no problem tracking me. Accuracy will hover around the 4 meters that you can see here. And if I open something like Twitter here, I think I've already got that open in the background. So how is the performance of that? Loading that in, just get it to refresh. And then scrolling is quite good, as you can see. It does take a little while in the beginning because it has so many images and things to load up. So it's going to be a little bit slower there. It's just the full screen gesture lag sometimes that I am seeing, just between swapping over to different applications and then going back home. You will now and then see it. So it's almost completely gone, just not 100%. Alright, so what about the loudspeakers? So I've tested out, before I comment on the loudspeaker, the 3.5mm headphone jack. And it sounds good. This is typical Xiaomi. To me, it sounds perfectly fine. There's no real issue there with it. Loudness is okay. Now, there is no secondary loudspeaker in the earpiece here, unfortunately. Now, I thought that might have been the case because it was so wide, but definitely not. It's only firing out from the bottom, but I will give you a sample of it. But just to add that the loudness I feel should be a little bit louder on the bottom loudspeaker. It's not a deal breaker or anything like that. It's still loud, but it just could be a little bit louder. Anyway, here's that sample. I'll just demonstrate now the face unlocking. I have the lift to wake enabled, so you just lift the phone up and then look at it, it unlocks. It is very quick, as you can see. I'll do that one more time for you. So lift it up, looks at me, unlocks. Now the fingerprint reader on the rear, of course, there is always on, and when you touch it, it unlocks instantly in about, well, under half a second. It's very quick, so I'll do that again. I'll touch it now, and you can see that's how quick it is. Now, boom. Very quick. So no problems with the face unlocking or the fingerprint reader. Now for gaming performance, I'm going to test out PUBG here with the high frame rate setting and then HD as our graphics. Let's see how it performs. So you can see PUBG is running fine. There's another couple of players here, so I'm probably going to actually just die already. Okay. It doesn't seem to be bad at all to me. In the high setting, you're not really getting much lag. If any, actually, that seems to be pretty good. Okay, a tiny little bit then when scrolling around. This title here is Shadowgun Legends, and it is running on high settings, and visually it looks stunning, this one. You get a little tiny bit of slowdown here and there, but overall the performance is good, and I'm not really noticing any major frame dips, so it's not like unplayable like it was on the AutoCube X tablet that I looked at, which had a very old MediaTek chip in it. Couldn't handle this game, but the Snapdragon 660 is handling this one just fine. Just before I show you some camera samples, this is the camera app, so typical Xiaomi camera app, MIUI 10, a few little tweaks and things in here. AI mode, you got your filters, HDR's off by default. Video mode, portrait mode, using the dual camera, so it'll stitch together an image. I'll give you samples of that shortly. And with video here, just wanted to point out that if you go into the settings, that we do have this right here, which is electronic image stabilization. You can see our video quality, the maximum setting is 1080p 60 frames per second. I'm going to shoot it in 30 because it actually looks a little bit better. So no 4K. 4K is missing for some reason. But anyway, here are those samples. So here's a video sample. This is a front-facing camera, and we get 1080p max here. There's no electronic image stabilization, so it's going to be a little bit shaky. The crop on it is actually quite good, which is fine. I find the audio quality as well, yeah, it's alright. It's not the best, but I've definitely heard a lot worse than this. Overall, front-facing video quality, I think is good. It's not bad. So this video is being shot in 1080p 30 frames per second. There is no 4K option. You have to use a third-party app at the moment called Open Camera for that. Now there's a bit of wind noise that gets picked up here. It's a little bit windy at the moment, and you can see the electronic image stabilization in 1080p here is working fine. Like, I'm walking forward and it's taking most of the shakes out of it. Now there is a bit of a problem at times, I find, with the focus.
it does tend to hunt a little bit now and then, depending on the conditions. It's not as good the focus as the Redmi Note 5 with its dual pixel face detection autofocus. You notice that here it works, but sometimes, is it going to work there? The focus comes into play, no. But with the Redmi Note 5, that would not be a problem there with its dual pixel autofocus. And now we do have at least 4K with electronic image stabilization thanks to that application I mentioned, Open Camera. And as you can see, it's working quite well as long as you've got a steady hand. My hand is not the steadiest. This is now a sample of video in low light. Now the sun went down about half an hour ago, so there's still a little bit of light around. You can see a lot of grain starts to creep into the image, and the focus then does start to struggle quite a bit. And I found that the low light photography, as you've seen from my samples, is not wonderful. And it's kind of what you expect in this category, and the price, of course, of this phone. But not wonderful at low light.
Alright, so to quickly recap here, we have an excellent build quality. So I've got a metal frame around the outside that is painted. Glass on the rear. We do have Gorilla Glass 5, I think, is on the front screen too, which is good. And it's going to be a little bit more scratch resistant, a little bit more resistant to drops too. So the water drop notch does look okay. I'm fine with it. I thought it would bother me, but it's not really that bad at all. In fact, I think it's better than the punch hole in the screen of those two mobiles that I reviewed that had the hole there. I think this is better. So we have a very good build. Yes, for the price, definitely. It's excellent. Type-C port, finally no more micro USB ports. Finally, they've used up their stock Xiaomi. I was getting really sick of micro USB ports. But that's good. So the voice call quality, I have made some voice calls on this. Very good. Face unlocking, very fast as I demonstrated. You just look at it and it unlocks. It's really quick. In fact, I'll do it now. And it unlocks. It's really good. Fingerprint reader as well. Do that. I'll just touch it now. Boom. Really quick. No complaints with that whatsoever. So it does have a large 4,000 milliamp hour battery on here. And my estimate is about 9 to 10 hours of screen on time with the IPS panel that this has on here. Charging time is going to be just over about 2 hours if you're using the 10 watt charger. It does support the faster 18 watt chargers, so that time will then drop down to just under about an hour and 50 minutes. But I will have exact figures with battery life in an up and coming video, maybe like after 3 or 4 days of using this phone at least to get those kind of figures there. So the camera quality, yes, we've got 48 megapixel sensor on the rear. And yeah, I mean, the photo quality I think is good. It's not amazing, but for the price, it certainly does take a good photo. The portrait mode stitching as well seems to be good. Front-facing camera, okay. Bad to see no 4K support yet with video, so hopefully they're going to add that later on. Now, the ROM performance, very smooth for the most part. If you've got a real keen eye, you can see tiny little micro stutters here and there now and then, just with the full screen gestures it seems to happen. This is something that's been happening for a long time with Xiaomi, and it is almost completely gone. I'm still seeing a tiny little bit of it. There's no LTE band 20 for those that need this with the Chinese version as well. A lot of Chinese bloatware. And that comes to probably the biggest negative for me, and this is me being very picky, but when you do look at the screen, especially at the top at certain angles, you will see that darkness that comes in there. It's not IPS bleed, but it's just it seems to be from the manufacturing process to create that little notch at the top, that we are getting like this dimming, this darkening of the pixels. We're not getting a evenly distributed backlight. The whites there are especially noticeable, as I pointed out when I showed you some of the screen at the top. That's just not a super high quality IPS panel that is in this. The brightness is good, around 570 lux, which is very good. You can see it in daylight. That is fine. I feel again that Xiaomi's done it for the price of around about 100, and this one costs about 200 US. This 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. For the price, you are getting a fantastic phone. I can see that already. And they've done it again. They've set the price for the quality of what you're getting, the price point here. Really, really good phone so far. So we'll have follow-up videos. And if you haven't seen my reviews of the punch hole new kind of trend that's come in 2019, those are right up here. Thank you so much for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel as well for more up-and-coming reviews. Bye for now.